All right, we're going to talk about everybody's favorite topic today. We're going to talk incels again. Yes, that is correct. You did not hear that incorrectly. So there's this Lifetime movie that just was released. I know Lifetime, right? I'm reviewing a Lifetime movie, but I think it's important that I add the context of why this Lifetime movie is important. Okay? This is not just something that I felt, hey, you know what? This would be a great idea to review because Lifetime makes such good, compelling, amazing movies. No. If any of you have ever watched your average Lifetime movie, it follows the same formula. It's typically woman moves into a new part of town, meets this gorgeous man that is obsessed with them, but they don't know that they're obsessed with them. The guy strategically starts to ruin their life little by little after getting rejected by said woman, and so forth and so forth. There might be a death. The endings are usually anticlimactic, where the guy either gets stopped or escapes, and then there's no further follow-up. That's your standard Lifetime movie. But today, we're going to be talking about Dateless to Dangerous, My Son's Secret Life. What a long title for a movie. But this movie's important. It is, because this is essentially about incels. And I actually saw this movie twice because I know that it's going to travel around the cultural zeitgeist of the internet, and other people are going to make videos on it. So before this happens, I felt the need to put my 2 cents in on this particular subject. So this movie was actually released last Saturday. Yes, it was released on June 21st, 2025. It's a brand new movie. Okay. And it's starting that girl from Full House, the one that played Stephanie Tanner. Her name is Jodie Sweetin, and she plays Noelle, who is the single mother of the movie, right? I just want you to know that they got all the tropes correct in this movie. You have the single mother, you have the sister who's like a dime piece, right? So they would call that a Stacy. You have the incel brother. You have the incel brother's best friend, who is a Chad, right? You have other supporting characters. You have people on the internet that radicalize this young man, and he starts doing all these crazy things. Like, the movie just escalates as time progresses. Now, I want to talk about why I think this movie is important, and I want to talk about the cultural impact that I believe it has and how relevant it really is today. Now, before all the red pillars dive their hands in on this movie, because they will, and they will try to make their best effort to make it seem like, no, this is incorrect. This is a horrible misrepresentation of the red pill. This is not masculinity. This is not the manosphere. Well, it kind of is. Yeah, it is. Just a little bit. You see, dear viewer, a while back, I made a video about the manosphere and if it's hurting young men, right? It's an older video. I made it in my car one day when I was driving to get some medicine. And, whatever. I'm a small channel, so it didn't really get a big boom. But there are things that I spoke about in that video that are relevant to this particular movie. So we're going to start from the beginning. Okay, so once again, Jodie Sweetin, she's the only name here worth noting because everybody else is, generic actor, right? So she plays a single mother to the protagonist, who is called Tyler. No, I'm sorry. His name's not Tyler. His name is Miles, right? His name is Miles. He is a high school student that is in the debate team. He's fairly popular. I would even say he's a good looking kid. He's not horrible looking. He's extremely intelligent, and he actually is not bullied. He's not somebody that is viewed as an incel. He's just an average kid. He's your average 17-year-old who's in this debate team that he is one of the stars of. And he has a best friend whose name is Sam, and he is what people would consider the tall Chad of the movie, right? Now, not by his fault, right? It's no fault of his own. That's his genetics. He's a good looking guy, right? Square jawed and everything. And Miles has a sister who is this really pretty, attractive girl who is also very intelligent, right? And she, I guess, will be considered the Stacy of the movie. All the tropes are here. I'm telling you. You couldn't pick a more tropey movie to discuss incels, the red pill / manosphere / all that stuff. And the word manosphere actually does get invoked towards the ending of the movie. They don't mention any specific names. They don't name any of like the major creators. None of that gets named. No, they just mention it. sort of just like in passing. And so the way our story progresses, right, is that the mother, she's a single mom because the dad kind of just went off. You don't really know what happened much within the beginning. You find out later on what he ended up doing to lead her to be a single mom. But there's this homecoming, right? So there's this big theme of a homecoming party that's happening in the school. And all of the students are coming up with these clever, elaborate ways to ask a girl out. And, you know, the girl usually says yes. So there's this young lady named Sophia who Miles is attracted to, right? He doesn't want to do any grand gestures. He feels that they're silly. He thinks that, hey, you know what? She's just going to say no to me, so I'm not going to bother asking her. So he doesn't, not for a little while at least. So the movie progresses, and then eventually he lets his sister talk him into creating this grand gesture to ask her to homecoming. So he does what any rational male would do. And he comes up with this elaborate trick where he pretends that he's dead in front of her locker with the tape surrounding his body, indicating that he is no longer with us in this plane of reality. And on the locker, it says, "I'm dying to take you to homecoming." So she naturally gets freaked out, but she doesn't show that she's freaked out. She kind of just like nudges his leg and she's like, "Hey, dude, I get it. This is clever, cute," right? He gets rejected. She says no to him. Not in a cruel way, not in this sadistic sort of, "Did you ever think you would stand a chance with me, boy?" No, it wasn't anything so cruel, nothing so malicious. It was very simple and innocent. She just said, "Hey, man, you know, I already said I was going with some friends, so I'm sorry." Now, he was crushed, so to say. And not only that, but this happened to him in front of the whole school, so he got embarrassed. So this is the first strike to his ego where he eventually starts to go down the path of inceldom, right? Now, to add some context, I need you to be aware of something. He speaks with this girl before this scene happens. They run into each other in the locker, and they have a very pleasant conversation. You could even downright say she probably likes him a little bit, but doesn't say anything, right? Now, you're going to notice a theme throughout this video, how his grand gestures or him just being too forward or too, what's the right way of saying it? I guess, yeah, just too forward, leads him into some heavy water with these women that he tries to talk to. So she did kind of like him, but I guess because his gesture was too grand, it was a little weird for her. So she kind of like politely put him down. Now, this is where your typical Lifetime movie plot hole comes into play, because she just vanishes for the whole movie. She was the catalyst to his inevitable destruction. And after this, she is no longer in the movie. She's not represented in any way, shape, or form. Yeah, they bring her up in passing, but she's no longer involved with the story. So later on in the evening, he's sad. So he's home playing video games with his LED lights and his headphones, and he's playing a first-person shooter. We don't know what game it is, but we just know he's playing a game. And he starts speaking to his internet friends, and this is where the radicalization begins. So the guy that he's speaking to, he doesn't actually know him in person. These two have never met before, because he explains to him the story on what happened, and then the guy says, "Hey, take a picture and send it to me. I want to see what you look like." So after he sends him a photo of himself, he says, "Oh, dude, no wonder she rejected you. You're a beta." Get it? You're a beta. I'm a beta too. So he tried to find common ground with him after that, and he realized, wait, I'm a beta? So I'm not an alpha? Is this why she said no to me? Right? So this is the beginning of his downfall. So the guy sends him a link it's supposed to be like a Reddit link, right? It's called Red Zone or something like that. And, you know, he basically tells them their story, and all these dudes, all these angry dudes just start saying, "Oh yeah, man, she, no wonder she said no to you. You're a beta. You know, she's horrible, blah, blah, this and that." You just see all these like word bubbles popping up about how horrible she is. And, you know, his story blew up, and he gained a little bit of popularity from that event. So fast forward, and by now, I just want you to know that he's going to school with his sister, and his best friend sort of start kind of falling for each other. It just happens very naturally. It wasn't anything crazy. You know, they were just both intelligent people. He invites her to their debate class. She joins because she was also pretty smart herself, and they kind of organically just sort of fall for each other, right? Now, Miles is not completely gone at this current juncture. He's still very much a regular dude, right? He's still intelligent. He's not a bad looking guy. He's fairly popular with his peers, among his peers. right? And women don't treat him like crap. Women actually, on the opposite, they actually kind of treat him pretty nice. They have conversations, they laugh at his jokes. He's not someone that's unpleasing to be around. Not yet. So they joined the debate class, and there's this other girl. I forgot the name of her character. I feel horrible for forgetting. But she ends up being Miles's debate partner, right? And this is important because you can kind of tell she likes him a little bit. She never says directly that she does like him, but she enjoyed having conversation with him. He made her laugh. She was always very smiley with him. You could tell that if he just sort of approached her, in a normal way, that she'd be down, right? That's kind of like implied indirectly without them saying so much. And he kind of starts getting along with her, and those two start getting a little close. Nothing crazy, very innocent at first, right? And we fast forward. I can't believe I'm giving like a full recap of a Lifetime movie, but it's important, all right? This context is important, right? So his mom, she is studying for the bar exam because she needs to be able to provide for her kids, because obviously the father is not around, right? And she hides the nature of why the father is gone from the children, because she doesn't want them to hate him, because he essentially abandoned them for another woman. That's pretty much what happened, right? So they're not the richest family. It's kind of implied that they're impoverished, even though you really can't tell, to be honest. With these type of movies, they have like a full ass house. Her car has no scratches on it. It looks beautiful. They look like they have a really nice place to live. So if they're poor, it's not showing. And anyway, so let me fast forward a little bit, because I'm giving too much of the plot of the movie. So he starts getting a little more radicalized as the movie progresses, because this guy that he keeps playing video games with is in his ear, and he's constantly letting him know that, hey, dude, you're a bum, and this is why these women don't like you. You don't have any money, you're short, and then he starts coming up with all these like incel terms to describe what women are, which there's one that I didn't even know what it meant. I think it was called foids. They're like female like androids or something like that. I found out about that later on through the movie because it gets explained. But he starts getting radicalized, and he gradually starts getting angrier, and his appearance even starts to change to match up with it. Like he would have his hair all nicely kempt, and then suddenly it starts looking like a little messier. He just starts getting angrier overall because he's getting rejected constantly. And this all culminates when his team has to go to a debate club, right? There's like a debate tournament, and his sister and friends missed the beginning prompts because they were being a little lovey-dovey with each other, which he also gets upset about. And he lies to them and tells them not the wrong prompts, but he ends up telling them that they were the opposition instead of the defenders, or whatever the case may be. Fellow debaters in the comments, let me know. And he kind of embarrasses them. So they fast forward, and they end up winning in spite of him lying to them. And they celebrate in this hotel room where I don't even know how this is really done, because his mom ends up being a chaperone to the debate along with their debate teacher. And the boys and girls each have their own hotel rooms right across from each other, right? Nothing's going to happen there, right? Miles, at this point, steals a bottle from his father's man cave, which was the basement, because he's not there. So why not take the bottle? Oh, by the way, I also did forget to mention that he requested that his mom start feeding him more protein because he wanted to bulk up and he wanted to start working out, because I guess the people in his head were telling him that, if you work out, you'll be the man, basically. This also becomes important. So he gets a little drunk, and his sister and best friend end up hooking up in the bathroom, which he gets upset about. So he tries to score with his debate partner. He takes her for a little walk. He tells her that he wants to show her something, and he abruptly just kisses her. Now, she doesn't slap him. She doesn't get all crazy on him. She just tells him, I don't want to date, and nervously scrams away, because obviously she was taken aback. Not that she hated him or thought that he was gross for doing that, but it was just so sudden that she just didn't appreciate it. So he gets really angry, tosses their winning trophy, acknowledging that this means nothing anymore. My anger, my rage is the only thing that matters at this point. So we fast forward a little bit, and him and his debate partner the next day, they're taking notes in the debate class, and he wants to talk about what happened, right? Now, he doesn't apologize to her. He doesn't say, hey, my fault for kind of like pushing myself on you like that. I should have been a little more subtle and at least try to, slowly work my way to it. There was no buildup. He just kind of went in for a kiss. And he ends up telling her, it's okay. She's like, what? He goes, it's okay that, we didn't do anything. Now, she goes, yeah, I know it's okay. Like, I chose not to do this. And instead of him apologizing, he just kind of like lets her know, hey, it's okay. Now, he thinks he's doing the right thing by saying this, but in reality, he's making himself seem selfish because he did something that was, I suppose, deemed wrong. And, instead of him showing any sort of remorse, he kind of just lets her know, he kind of tries to put it on her. And then she tells him two things. One thing she tells him is a little word of advice. If you're going to hit on your debate partner, you should be a little more chill about it. So that was her kind of letting him know that she wasn't against the idea, but the way he went about it was just wrong. And then she gets upset and tells him, the way you talk to women is as if they owe you something. So that kind of sticks with him because once more, he doesn't really apologize for any of his actions throughout the course of the movie. Anytime he does something, it's kind of waved off as just, it happened. All right, let's move on kind of deal. Now he should know better, but he also shouldn't because he's just a kid. He's only 17. He doesn't really know too much. He's smart enough to know how to have a debate, but, outside of that, he has a long way to go. So he just starts getting angrier and angrier. Then he gets on this game with this internet dude again, and the guy tells him about his bone structure in his face and how he could improve it. This is little black pill stuff that they started doing here, where they start talking about looks maxing, but he took it to the extreme. He told him basically, if you take a dumbbell and like beat yourself up, I guess the structure of your bones will build stronger to compensate. They don't say that directly, but he told him, hey, do you have a dumbbell? So Miles ends up hitting himself with the dumbbell, giving himself like a black eye and a black cheek. He was basically like all messed up, right? His mother, worried, obviously, is letting him know, hey, like, what the hell is this? He kind of just brushes her off, goes to school, yada, yada. Now, I haven't spoken much about the mother up until this point, but I need you all to be aware that the mother is actually a really good character in this movie, because even though Miles is gradually being radicalized by these people online, she never makes it seem like he himself is a bad person. She instead tries to understand him, and she even tells his sister at one point, hey, like, I think this is coming from him being lonely, because he did have some talks back and forth where he was saying that they're women and they just don't understand what it is like to be a man, because the man is the one that has to do the hunting and the woman just has to kind of say yes or no, which was said a couple of times during the movie. And there's actually physical examples of this being shown by the boys early on in the film trying to come up with elaborate ways to these girls out, right? The girl just has to smile, say he, yes, or reject them, right? So he kind of gets into this like argument at his debate class, and his debate teacher kicks him out, and he starts to really scare everybody. So his debate partner doesn't want to be partners with him anymore. She wants to switch, and she doesn't tell the teacher why necessarily, but the teacher could infer based off of Miles's previous behavior why she doesn't want to be there anymore. So he ends up switching them. He gets really pissed off. He like yells and says, oh, this is not fair. I don't accept this. He tried to be alpha, right, with the teacher and kind of let him know how things were going to go. And the teacher, obviously, because he's a regular person, he's well adjusted, was not having that. And he told him, get the hell out of this class, man. So he leaves. He ends up isolating himself. He ends up not going to the homecoming. Everybody else goes. Best friend ends up going. Oh, the best friend. Holy crap. I didn't even mention this. Before the party, before the climax of the film, Miles gets really upset because he hears some fooling around upstairs. So he runs up, he grabs his friend and tosses him out of the house. And he says, hey, man, me and you aren't friends anymore. You can't be here. So his friend tries to talk to him while they're at the door, and he pushes him down the stairs. And when he pushed him, his friend ended up breaking his arm in a few different places. Now, his friend being cool didn't press charges on him, but, they end up kind of just not being friends through the remainder of the movie. And Miles's way of trying to apologize to him was just saying, hey, I didn't mean for this to happen. Come on, be my friend. But that obviously doesn't happen because Miles has yet to apologize for any of his actions. So I'm going to get to the end of this, and then I'll give you my general thoughts as a whole on why I think this movie is important, even though I basically gave the whole movie away already. Spoiler alert for anyone that hasn't seen it, because it is a fairly new movie. So this all culminates with him speaking to his dad. His dad acknowledges that he is getting divorced from his mom. He wants to move in with his father, but his father kind of, without saying, no, you can't, he sort of lets him know indirectly. So Miles kind of is at this moment at his lowest point, and he wants to take it out on somebody. So he goes back to that red zone, which is the Reddit zone, and everybody's sort of telling him, hey, make them pay. Like, they deserve to pay. They deserve to die, this, that, and the third. So he takes his father's gun from a safe that he had in the basement, and he takes gasoline, and he tries to handle business, right? So his mom is unaware of what's happening, and she finds out that he took this gun, and she Nancy Drews her way over to the homecoming pre-event, and she drives over there, but Miles ends up setting this sort of like foresty little tree thing that they planted on the car to make it look like a really nice event outside of the venue. He sets that on fire to lure them out. And you think he's just going to like bust out shooting at them at this point, but he doesn't do that at all. What ends up happening is that he kind of gets scared and runs off, and his sister runs after him. And this is sort of, the climax of the movie right here. His sister runs after him. You don't know what he's going to do because he has a gun, and his sister's just scared. Even though he messed up, she still loves him because that's her brother. So she runs after him. She kind of finds him in this tunnel where he's like shrouded in darkness, sort of signifying that he's no longer who he once was. He's a different person, and she sees the gun. And he starts crying. He gets emotional. He tells her that she doesn't understand. And he says that nobody loves him. But then she replies that she does, in fact, love him. And she hugs him. And then the gun goes off. So here at this moment, we're thinking, oh, snap. Did one of them get shot by accident? The mom shows up. She sees him just standing there. She runs to them. Nobody gets shot. He ended up shooting the gun at the floor because it's a Lifetime movie and these are kids. So they weren't going to shoot them. So, the mom ends up hugging him also. They all hug him, and their hugs sort of calm down his anger, his rage. The two women that he viewed as his enemies the entire movie are the ones that were fighting for him when everybody else seemingly gave up. Their hugs, sort of like the Incredible Hulk when he's raging out and then Betty is the only one that's able to like calm him down. This is what ended up happening with Miles. So the end of the movie happens. He ends up in this like psych ward or juvie. And, they're giving him classes on how to like get de-radicalized from what happened. He seems a little more normal. He doesn't feel like he's completely there yet, but he's getting there. And he's genuinely sorry for his actions. He finally apologizes to his mom and his sister. They're both angry at him, but because he's family, they obviously love him. So, they end up, living, I guess, happily ever after. I mean, we don't really know what happens afterwards. I kind of wouldn't mind seeing a sequel to see if he like kind of jumps back into it or not. But yeah, anyway, I spent 23 movies basically giving you the entire plot and recap of what happened in the story. And I haven't yet told you why this is important. So we're going to do that right now. Now, when I was younger, and when I say younger, I mean back in like 2017, right? I started getting into red pill spaces because I had gone through a breakup and I was wondering why my ex said things that, weren't, that she didn't mean. And, I sort of started looking up for answers online, and then all these red pill content creators came out and I went down this rabbit hole. And you know what? It's very easy to go down this rabbit hole because, they sort of welcome you with loving and open arms. And that's something that you want because you're feeling at your lowest point, right? And the movie kind of does a good job of articulating that by the dude that's on the internet, giving him a support group to go online and see there are other people that think just like him. But what ended up happening, just like in the movie, I was becoming radicalized. I wasn't as angry as he was, and I never went as far as he did. But there were moments where I was viewing the women around my life as bad people, even though they didn't do anything wrong to me. I was just seemingly upset because things weren't going my way. Now, granted, gradually I got over that stuff and I was like, this is too much. And watching this movie kind of really shows me how ridiculous some of this stuff is, So I think it's really important that they show that. And not to mention that he wasn't actually an incel. All right. What is an incel? An incel is someone that's as a male that's involuntarily celibate, meaning that for reasons beyond them being able to explain, they're not able to get the interest of women romantically. Yeah, sure, they can pay for it, but the whole argument is that they shouldn't have to pay for it, that, they should be able to find someone that loves and cares about them. But they go about it the wrong way, and they end up dehumanizing these women. And as a result, no one wants to be around them. They become social pariahs, people that they no longer want around them. So that's what started happening to this kid, because he was a good looking kid. He was intelligent. He had everything going for him. And he ruined his life in a matter of weeks because he got rejected for a dance, and then he got rejected a second time, and he let these people get in his head. Even his mom at some point in the movie says, do you think it's normal to be involuntarily celibate at the age of 17? Indicating that, hey, if you haven't gotten laid yet, it's not that big of a deal. It'll happen eventually. And it would have. If he would have just chilled and realized that he wasn't who he thought he was, he would have been okay. So this is actually a very important message for a lot of young men out there. And I just want you to know, man, that no matter how bad it gets, just chill, let your life progress a little bit, you know, take yourself out of your own head, get out of your own way, and sort of see what's happening around you first. Yes, there's nothing wrong with going on the internet and getting information on things that you feel might be helpful towards you. And let me tell you something, the red pill isn't complete like nonsense. It does have good advice. They tell you to work out. They tell you to focus on your money. They tell you to make yourself your own mental point of origin. There's good advice that you can get from these communities, but you have to sort of filter out the good from the bad. You know, you have to realize in your own mind's eye, if you inherently are not this sort of person, then don't become that person because you feel it's your only recourse. There is always another way. You can do more. And you know what? Some of you won't. And it's really unfortunate, but that's everyone's lot in life. You know, not everybody could sing or dance. Not everybody can cook. Not everybody has the ability to gain who they want. And you know what? There's kind of falling under the grass is always greener fallacy, because just because you can score a relationship, it doesn't mean it's always going to be peaches and cream. You know, you're going to get into fights. You're going to get into disagreements. Your ideologies are going to clash as a whole. And, you know, sometimes you will inevitably break up with these people because you know that you're actually not a good match for each other, but you were just lusted. And in this like sexual lust that you were in, you know, you just wanted whoever was available to you. But realize that if you just take your time and chill, right, and you live your life and you build real genuine connections with people, and don't do this like brain dead, like this brain rot internet crap where all you do is read and you never actually practice what's preached on these things. You know what I mean? Go out and touch some grass. I know this is cope, quote unquote. People will tell me in the comments that I'm coping, but it's not actually cope. There's nothing wrong with going outside and seeing what else is out there versus just, you know, relying on this community of online gurus, quote unquote. You know, see what's out there, take the good, eject the bad. In short, I thought this movie was solid. Yes, it was a Lifetime movie. So what? It had great advice. It had really good, genuine moments. And I feel that for whoever ends up reviewing this movie that are in those spaces later, that they're going to try to make it seem like it's something that it's not. Okay. And it's basically just social commentary on what happens when somebody gets radicalized. That's all it really is. Okay. And it also shows you a positive message at the end. It says that it's not too late. Even if you go down this rabbit hole, it's not too late for you to rise from perdition. You know, you can come back from these things if you allow yourself to. Anyway, with that said, done.